Today I want to talk about something a little bit different, and instead of focusing on a specific topic, I want to actually talk about how I would learn machine learning and in particular NLP if I was starting from scratch. I've tried to keep this almost like guide as simple as possible because I think a lot of learning in terms of machine learning, data science, NLP, whatever else, it really needs to come from your own interests. And so I think a very strict order of things to do can almost ruin that learning experience. And so it's very important to just try and kind of figure things out as you go. But at the same time, I do think it's important to be aware of maybe a few particular courses or resources or books that have been very helpful for others in the past and therefore could also help you. So I've broken it down into kind of 4 parts. So there's the machine learning 101, applied ML, the origin of what I would say modern NLP, and also just modern NLP. And then after that, I've also added in another bit. So this is obviously very specific, and we'll just mention this at the end, but we won't really go into too much depth on it. So each of these parts here act as almost like a stage in your journey of learning. And of course, at the start, you actually need to learn about machine learning, and this is almost not even the start. So yes, you would start here, but you also need to learn Python, for example. So in reality, it might actually look something like this. So you would start with ML 101, and at the same time, in parallel, you might want to be learning Python. Now, the reason I say in parallel rather than just starting with Python is more to do with whether you're interested in that or not. Because for me, I started Python with the specific interest of like algorithmic trading, and then very quickly that moved into sort of more machine learning. But learning Python for the sake of Python, I wasn't necessarily that interested in, although I will say that once I got started, I very quickly became very obsessed with just coding random things. So in my personal opinion, and that's not necessarily going to be right for everyone, I would kind of learn those 2 things in parallel, because you have to learn the Python side for the machine learning side, but they both complement each other, and having both of them in parallel and just doing Python will probably keep you more interested than just focusing on one at a time. So in terms of resources for just Python, I use Codecademy more than anything else. Now, when I used it, it was, I think, cheaper than it is now. So something to be aware of. But there are so many good resources out there for learning Python. You probably aren't going to struggle to find anything. The other thing I would say is also try projects. So just building projects will help your coding skills and every other component on here so much, because it shows you where you're missing knowledge and also helps you learn how to apply what you have learned. And at the same time, I think it's very motivating to build something. At least for me, I find it incredibly motivating to just build something cool that I find interesting. So that's another thing that I would definitely recommend on the Python side. So yeah, that's a prerequisite almost, or something you do in parallel to what I have here. So Machine Learning 101 is really kind of an introduction to machine learning and where you would learn about key concepts. So you have neural networks up here, loss, optimization, activation functions, and there is a lot more than just that in there. So with all of these resources, you can mostly get them for free. So Neural Networks from Scratch is very good by Sendex. And Sendex in general is also very good, especially when you're starting Python. That's probably another thing to add to the Python prerequisites. You can also learn from Sendex. That's one of the places I learned as well. So Neural Networks from Scratch is, in my opinion, a really good resource. And it's one of those things that wasn't around when I was learning this stuff, but I really wish it had been. And so much so that I bought it anyway. And it is genuinely incredible. Now, you don't need to buy the book as well. Like, the book is great, and I like having something physical. But you can also do all this stuff online as well. Or not all of it. I think the first parts of the book has already been covered on Sendex's YouTube channel. So, I mean, where do we find that? I think it's just YouTube Sendex. Yeah, so just Sendex. And you can find on here, here we are, it's literally right at the top, Neural Networks from Scratch, intro neuron code. And this is really nice as well, because you have a lot of visuals in here, and obviously Sendex is talking through it, which is really nice. But of course, also the book is really incredible. And the reason I like it is because it's going through the code of everything, making everything very visual, but breaking everything down. Because what you'll find later on in machine learning, that everything is very abstract, but it's so important to understand the core concepts behind all of these things. So we can see here, like, he's really breaking down everything. So this looks horrible, but this is a really nice way to actually just understand what is going on in a neural network. And then later on, with like actually coding and keeping things really simple, like inputs, weights. And the issue is that in most cases, most tutorials, they go too abstract too quickly. Whereas in this book and on the video tutorials, Sendex doesn't go too abstract too quickly. He builds it up from nothing, which is really nice, especially if you're just starting out. So that's one, in my opinion, very good resource for when you're starting out. Another one that it seems almost like everyone in machine learning or data science has done this course at some point. And it is, I will be honest, it is outdated, but not so much it's not too outdated. It's still very valuable. So the things that you learn on this course very much focus on the concepts behind much of the older stuff in machine learning, and particularly the things that make machine learning what it is today. Now, one of the main reasons I say this is outdated is that it uses a programming language called Octave, which is almost like an open source MATLAB, if any of you know what MATLAB is. So in reality, it is actually very similar to Python syntax. So it's not so much of a bad thing that they use Octave, because it translates over very easily. And one thing that is great about this course is that you can actually enroll for free. I don't know if it's free the entire way through. It's been ages since I did this course, but either way, you can audit everything on almost everything on Coursera for free. It just means you don't get a certificate at the end, but that's it's completely fine. And if you really wanted a certificate at the end of it, you can obviously pay for it. But this is an incredible course. And you can see some of the things they go through, linear algebra. This is so important, just a little bit of understanding of the maths behind all of this to start with. Logistic regression, regularization. They go through so many important concepts that honestly, like, absolutely crucial for later on. So this is, without a doubt, one of the best courses when you're getting started. I think it's really, really good. And then the final one that I wanted to talk about is a 100-page machine learning book. Again, obviously, this is a book. I do think you can get it online, as far as I know. So I'd have a look at that. At one point you could, for sure. There's a PDF. But this is really nice because it's 100 pages. Well, I think maybe there's a few more than 100. Yeah, okay, so it goes kind of over 100 pages. But because it's such a small number of pages, everything in here is very important. So it's kind of stripped down everything you need just so you have all the important things. So we can go ahead, maybe find something interesting here. Let's see whatever this is here that I made a note of a long time ago. Okay, so I'm looking at like just classification versus regression. This is like just a few paragraphs explaining the difference between these two incredibly important things. And then we have parameters versus hyperparameters. It's just so much important stuff. And you have charts and visuals, which I personally really like to have visuals in everything as much as possible. So this is another really cool book that I would 100% recommend. It's also code as well. Is it Python? Yeah. So it's really nice, in my opinion. And once you have gone past that, you kind of want to start looking at applied machine learning. So this is the only thing on this list I haven't personally gone through, although I have watched a few videos from this. And the reason I recommend it is because Daniel Burke is absolutely incredible at taking machine learning and stripping down everything you don't need to know and just keeping what you do need to know, and teaching you in an incredibly entertaining way. So this bootcamp course as well, you can, I think, possibly also find it on Udemy. It has an incredibly high rating. Every course that Daniel Burke has done is incredibly high rating. People are super happy with it. And it's really friendly to beginners. So that's why I recommend this, even though I haven't been all the way through it myself. But either way, I'm very confident that this is a very good resource for those of you that are interested. But of course, it's up to you. And another thing that I would say here is, okay, I think it's very important to learn this sort of thing. But at the same time, if you're really just kind of impatient, I mean, it's probably best you do it. But if you are super impatient, fine, you can probably skip it and move on to the sort of modern NLP stuff, because a lot of the code in modern NLP is actually quite simple. So you can maybe drop that bit, just as long as you're aware that there's going to be a lot of things that come up where you're going to be quite confused, like pandas and NumPy if you haven't seen them before. But nonetheless, you will learn a bit of NumPy in these early ones, especially neural networks from scratch. So it's kind of possible to skip it if you're just impatient, which is fine. I'm impatient all the time as well. I just want to learn new things. So then the next thing is, if you're really going for NLP, I think it's really good to learn what is current and present in NLP, but at the same time, to really understand any of that, it's very important to understand where it came from. So I would definitely recommend Stanford CS224N. It's incredible on YouTube. That will take you through so many incredibly useful things in NLP that are taught by some of the best people in the world, and it's very relevant. It's incredibly useful. The only thing is, at least when I went through this course, which to be fair was a few years ago, they didn't really have anything on the most recent stuff in NLP. That might have changed now, and that is why I have kept it over here, because if they do have anything on the more recent stuff in NLP, I think it's very little. So that's why I kept it in sort of the origin stuff, because it mainly seems to focus on things that you see here, like word vectors, recurrent neural networks, vanishing gradient, and maybe they go into attention near the end, although I can't say for sure there. And the next thing that I would recommend, and that I also did, so I did this course and I found this to be very good, over on Coursera, again, I do believe if you look in like enrollment options down here or come down here, you can audit the course. Can I take the course for free? You can audit the course for free. See? Now, I'm not sure how you do that. It's somewhere on here. They keep it kind of hidden, but you can audit it for free. So that's incredibly useful. And this is a really good course. It's actually a specialization, so it's multiple courses in one. Again, they don't really go into the more modern stuff, although I do know that they, I believe, actually paired up with Hugging Face, which is like modern NLP, and did introduce some of that at some point. So here, sort of attention models. Yeah, they've brought in T5 and BERT, so, and reformer models as well. So that's pretty cool. So even at the end of this, you will get to learn some of the more recent NLP stuff. So then the final bit is modern NLP. So in here, there are a few things. So how transformers work. So this is an article I wrote, and of course there'll be links to this that you can access for free. And in this, I just wanted to explain where transformers came from in terms of going from recurrent neural networks through to adding attention to those recurrent neural networks, encoder decoder models, and how that attention works. And I mean, obviously I'm biased, but I think this is a relatively good summary of what a transformer model is. And transformer models are really the foundation of modern NLP. They're incredibly important. So I think that's quite good just to read through that and try and understand what is actually going on. And then there's two courses here. So there's my course here. You can always find discount on this, but I don't necessarily think you need to even pay, because there's a Hugging Face course, and the Hugging Face course will cover everything I cover in my course anyway and more. The only thing is that maybe my course is maybe a little more applied and maybe a little more concise in some parts. And as well, a lot of the stuff I cover in my course, I also cover on YouTube for free. So you just have a bit more of a structure, I suppose. So the Hugging Face course is like I said, incredible. You have a nice little summary of the course here, which can I zoom in? That's probably the closest I'm going to get. So you have an introduction, diving in, and more advanced stuff. And you go through everything. So using transformers, Hugging Face, they have multiple libraries for NLP, transformers library, datasets library, tokenizers library. They're all very good. I would definitely recommend this as that sort of starting point, or as almost the foundation of where you learn your modern NLP techniques. So that's the modern NLP stuff. And yeah, as I have written here, I think at this point you're definitely in a good position to do some pretty interesting projects. So at this point, I would expect you've probably done some projects anyway. But if you haven't, then for sure at this point you really should do some projects. So these are just projects that I've done in the past and actually showed you how to do on YouTube. So there's building transform models from scratch. I think this is really useful to understand how all of this works. And there's a few things in there. So this is like building an Italian BERT model from scratch. And I do have other series as well on that sort of thing. And then there's also another series I did here, which again is the same. It's like a Q&A app when I used to have that awful GoPro camera. Oof, not very nice. But anyway, they are at least useful, I hope, as a guide or as inspiration to what sort of projects you can do. So, I mean, that's really, when it comes to NLP, that's probably as much as you want to go. But I will mention, of course, a lot of what I do is going to sort of semantic search and information retrieval. So if that's the sort of thing that you're interested in, then of course there are other resources that you can go through for that. And these are all free if you want them to be free. So the only one that isn't sometimes free is this book here, which we'll talk about in a minute. But there are these two here, which are just series that I've written. And if you go on here, you can see there's quite a lot in here, and it's all free. So it's quite, I think it's a good deal. So you come down and you can see we have all these different chapters that really go through what we would call sentence transformers, semantic search. And for me, I think this is a really interesting sort of subdomain of NLP. And then here we're looking at vector search, another important part of information retrieval. And I, of course, again, be able to find a free link to this in the description. You see there's a few parts here, which is introducing similarity search, face, and a few other things. So again, free course, I think it's a good deal. And then this is the final one. So mining of massive data sets is a really cool book. It's quite big as well. There's this really interesting picture on the front here. And this is more like when you start getting into your theory side of things, and it's not directly applicable to a lot of NLP, I will be honest. But there is so many interesting things. It's almost like the theory of everything that built up information retrieval, and some obviously more advanced stuff as well. But this is really when you're getting into trying to understand everything on a almost deeper level, I would say. Though at the same time, a lot of it you might not even find directly applicable to vector search. As I said, it's more everything behind vector search. It can be incredibly useful, and some of this stuff is really interesting and definitely useful when you're actually implementing these sort of things. But that's another one that's really good. But like I said, you can also get that online for free, which is really nice. So if you go over to here, mmds.org, you can come here and where is it? I think there is a link over. Yeah, so you have all the links here. I'm sure there's a way to find the whole book in one. Oh yeah, in this as well. So you can also do that. It's pretty useful. So yeah, I mean that's kind of what I would recommend you do if you're looking to learn NLP, machine learning, all this sort of stuff. That's the route I would go. A lot of those things, obviously, I went through myself, and for me, it has worked out well so far. So that's a good indication that at least some of these resources will hopefully be useful to you as well. And I get this question asked a lot, how do I learn these things? And hopefully this video will be some sort of guide for at least some of that. But I'm also super interested in what resources you recommend. So yeah, definitely let me know if there's anything you think is missing. And yeah, thank you very much for watching. I hope it's been useful, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.